Hey there, cutes, put on your dancing boots. Come dance with me. Come dance with me. What an evening for some terpsichore handsome face.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Sunday Cook, where today I'm going to be teaching you how to make the most succulent, perfectly pink in the inside rack of lamb.
Come on, come on, come on and dance with me.
I know many of you out there are often afraid to make it, but it's actually a cinch. So join me in my little kitchen where we're gonna go and cook up a feast. See you later! Right guys, let's have a look at the ingredients. So on my board, I've got a range of fresh herbs. I start with fresh thyme, some rosemary, and some parsley. Then the next ingredient, which actually goes really well with lamb, is garlic. I've got a whole bulb, but I'm actually going to use 4 cloves. Then, to combine everything and to create that crust, I'm going to use some breadcrumbs. Let's have a look now at the star of the show. Here I've got 580 grams of rack of lamb, which has been locally sourced. I can't wait to see what that produces because it's gonna be super delicious. So, what we're gonna do now is the crust that will go on top of my lamb. So, in a bowl, I'm gonna add some garlic, which I'm gonna first crush, and then finally slice into tiny little pieces. Once I've done that, almost there, I'm gonna add my aromatics, which includes the thyme. Thyme is I'm gonna take that off of their stalk. I'm also gonna add my rosemary at this point, and I'm gonna take my rosemary leaves off of their stalks too, followed by the parsley. You then want to bunch it together with your fingers. Just make sure you don't cut yourself, and then slice them very thinly in just as thin as you did with the garlic. Again, make sure you curl your fingers just so that you don't catch them underneath. I've done that before. So now you want to add and combine your garlic and continue chopping into it. And then in your bowl, add your breadcrumbs. Now I'm using store-bought breadcrumbs, but you should be able to make your own just using some stale bread and pulsating into a food processor. I just didn't have any bread to start with. So I've combined my herbs and my breadcrumbs together. I'm now seasoning it well, and then I'm gonna give it a good mix. Actually, I'm gonna use my fingers. It's so much easier using your fingers. There you go. So now we are going to turn our attention to preparing our lamb. So what we want to do first, before we go and sear it, is we want to cut into it diagonally through the fat part of the meat. Now make sure you don't go too deep, because otherwise you will cut into the flesh. What this will do in the cooking time is that while you're searing, the fat will render and then it'll stay into the pan whilst it'll create a nice golden crust on the outside. I'm seasoning it well with cracked fresh black pepper. I like to crack my own pepper just before I'm using it, so I keep my peppercorns whole. So you want to add your pepper and your seasoning really liberally. Much of it will go to the bottom of the pan anyways when it's cooking in the oven. And then I use sea salt. Lamb loves sea salt. If you are going to be using table salt, just make sure that you don't use too much of it, because it tends to be saltier. Something else to remember is when you are seasoning your meat, just make sure that you season all angles, all sides, and even, push in the seasoning into the creases that you've created from scoring the meat. Now let's start to cook. Get your pan ready and hot, add a small knob of butter. I'm adding some light olive oil so that the butter doesn't burn, and then I'm infusing my butter and oil with some fresh crushed garlic. I'm gathering my tongs and I'm just gonna swirl it around my pan and push it out into my pan so that the garlic juices come out. And then when it's nice and hot, and your pan is really hot when it starts to smoke, I'm adding my meat. I'm adding it skin side down, and as you can see now, it's all golden and caramelized. I'm not actually cooking the meat through, I'm just searing it. Take your meat aside, and then what I'm using is mustard. This one is a Sauterne white wine mustard, which I'm using to glaze over the skin side of the rack of lamb. So I'm brushing it through, and then I'm going to add a really generous amount of the herb and garlic breadcrumbs. Make sure you tap it in, nice and compact. And then once that's done, just put it to one side while you heat your oven up to a maximum temperature. So I'm going to add it to the middle shelf. So I've put the meat side towards me so that it doesn't overcook, and then I set my timer to 20 minutes exactly. And then after 20 minutes, it'll come out really golden, really crispy on the outside, and you just need to let it rest. Yes, let your meat rest for at least 10 minutes before you go ahead and carve. I know you're just gonna have to resist, but trust me, once you've allowed your meat to rest, when you start carving into it, you'll see the juices will just be flowing out. It'll be succulent and perfectly pink on the inside.
Dance with me.
And now it's time to plate. So I'm plating it with some Hasselback potatoes, some good old-fashioned mint sauce, and a couple root vegetables that I got from the farmer's market earlier in the week. And yeah, that's it, guys. My herb crusted rack of lamb. Enjoy. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of The Sunday Cook. If you liked what you saw, then hit the thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave me a comment, please do so in the field below. Otherwise, I will see you next time on The Sunday Cook. Folks start to roam as we walked home, cheek to cheek.